And then I was in, again, for COP15, 2009. My activism led up to that point. And then at that point, just what I experienced working with other groups over during that conference led me to start writing about it and taking a step back from what I was doing and trying to figure out why we didn't win at everything and why everything was always watered down and why I was getting censored in public platforms and that. So that caused me to take a step back and really start analyzing the movements themselves. Yeah.
Can you say the name of the conference again, because I missed that?
The United Nations Conference of the Parties, 2009, COP15 in Copenhagen. So that's I went to that and I came back, and actually when I came back there was police on my doorstep asking me questions about a protest we were having the next day or a couple of days after that. And yeah, around that time, that's when I stepped back and started writing about what I was seeing as a person involved with all the groups. I mean, involved with, you know, just all of them, all the big ones that you know of, 350 at that time. A big one that came out was Tick, Tick, Tick. That's one that really undermined the developing nations at the conference, in Bolivia in particular. Well, developing nations and those vulnerable islands, they were demanding that the world not exceed 1 degree temperature rise. And then the NGOs, the big ones, the international ones like Greenpeace, they created this, and it took me a long time to find this out. They created a campaign called Tick, Tick, Tick with Avaaz Advertising in the UK, one of the biggest advertising agencies in the world. And they created this campaign that it was a corporate campaign to basically exploit the message and allow corporations to utilize that message to gain support from the public. That was sort of the beginning of the corporations and the NGOs really coming together. And then that was in 2009, and now at 2020, it's really become, after like a decade of social engineering, it's really become, there's a word, if you once you know it, you start seeing it everywhere, together. So now openly corporations and the ruling class and activists, NGOs, is becoming normal for us all to be seen together. Like, that's a key message behind everything, together. And the thing is, we're not together. Like, what it's done is erased all class analysis. And then just jumping back again to that conference, well, Avaaz and Tick, Tick, Tick demanded 2 degrees. That was a full 1 degree over the 1 degree that the developing nations and islands were demanding. So they completely undermined the very most vulnerable nations in the world. And so it's ironic that 10 years later, when we had the right temperature at the time, and now we've, you know, fully exceeded that, and we've allowed everything to keep getting worse and worse. And now all of a sudden they say planetary emergency, climate emergency, when they're the very ones that undermined it 10 years ago at the most important conference that we had. And so if you go back further before that, I have the papers published online in 1999. There's papers on Greenpeace acknowledging that we can't go further than 1 degree, that the planet as a whole can't be allowed to, the temperature to increase globally 1 degree. And then there's another paper, Friends of the Earth, acknowledged that same paper based on a science paper going back to the UN in 1988. So basically everything's been allowed to accelerate for economic growth. And now, right now with the whole virus, what we're going through right now with the lockdown of the earth, now it's a reset into the 4th Industrial Revolution. So now this is a pause. It's like a controlled demolition, and then they're relaunching it into the 4th Industrial Revolution. So that it's all intertwined, like the environment movement, the corporations. World Economic Forum is probably the biggest behind everything, and that encompasses all the corporations, all global finance, ruling class.
So can I just ask you a bit, because Avaaz I know is one of the NGOs, and obviously has a huge following.
Yeah.
And, can you help our listeners just to understand what Avaaz, some of what they're responsible for? Why can we not trust Avaaz?
Avaaz, if you look at who the founders of Avaaz, they're all completely embedded into the United Nations, into like the British and US governments. These aren't grassroots activists that have risen up. These are all Harvard graduates that are all part of the elite establishment from the get-go. And Avaaz has been major since it began back in 2007 at destabilizing countries in service to empire. So over and over again, you saw them involved in Libya, where we annihilated one of the best, the finest countries in Africa, who'd done so much in Africa, the leader, Gaddafi. And so, and even that, it's all, anyone who's a threat to the states is made into a demon, right? They're demonized. Avaaz and all the NGOs come in and they create, it's like the behavioral economics of hatred. They create demonization campaigns. They build on hate. They sell hate. And they create that hatred to create an acquiescence to go in and bomb countries. You get citizens actually supporting and applauding, going to destroy a whole nation of people, our brothers, our sisters, babies, children. It's incredible how powerful this is, and that's why it's so dangerous. They tried to overthrow the Bolivian government back years ago during a Tipnis dispute. Syria, the same thing. I mean, Syria has done an amazing job, the Syrian army, of fighting the biggest empire on the planet and liberating their country from terrorist forces. So again, Avaaz didn't succeed in the no-fly zone in Syria this time, but I mean, they tried their hardest. And so at the same time that they're doing that, building hatred and trying to destabilize countries that the US is targeted, at the same time they're talking about saving elephants and whatever, butterflies, like things that everyone wants to save, beautiful things. Yeah. And so it creates confusion.
Yeah, an interesting campaign from them not so long ago, which was about asking for money, which in the past I would have been giving them money for. So it was just very interesting to see. And it was about censoring misinformation.
Oh, yeah.
And it was really interesting to see it and go, oh,
Funny.
my God, I know what that misinformation is. That's the truth. That's
right.
The voice of the grassroots activists and people that are really fighting for justice are being censored, and people that really care are paying for that, are giving their consent for that level of censoring to happen.
Yeah, I mean, without social license, a lot of the things that are going ahead and obviously happening cannot happen. And the corporations, World Economic Forum, we mean business, that you must have the people on your side. You must have that social license. Otherwise, there will be revolt and resistance. And so, I mean, that's the key thing. And that's where the NGOs really, really are at the forefront, obtaining that acquiescence, creating that social license necessary, lay out things that harm us and that destroy our shared environment, that destroy our planet, that kill people around the planet.
I just want to acknowledge that this is huge. And, the cognitive dissonance, the betrayal, when we feel that we are, certainly, a number of years back when I was subscribing to all these NGOs, and, I've never been wealthy, but giving money to all number of charities, Greenpeace, the Green Party, you know, so many Avaaz 350, signing so many petitions every day, and feeling like I was, you know, feeling good about what I was doing, and being part of making a difference. And so it's a really big shift, and you know, for a number of years now since I've been aware of that, and I've pulled back from that, but this holding, you know, and personally been holding the energy around what's happening with generation technology. It's a very, very it's not a biological energy, it's a very unattractive energy. So the NGOs have created this very kind of feel nice kind of green part of the environmental movement, whereas holding this 5G piece, it doesn't feel very nice, and it doesn't feel very attractive, and nobody is very attracted to it, you know, and they don't really want to hear about it. So I just really hope that our listeners can stay with us and just feel. It will bring up very strong feelings if this is new information. Cory has written an incredibly thorough, I think it's 6 articles, 6 volumes that you've written on
the second one so far is another 7. It's very, very serious. Like, I wouldn't waste my time writing about it if I didn't think it was so serious, but I see it as the biggest barrier to creating a better world. Yeah, and, you know, a lot of people, I see people that have really caring people, they don't have a lot of money, and they'll send that last $5 or $10 to Avaaz or to Greenpeace, whatever. I mean, Rikin Patel, the founder of Avaaz, draws $200,000 of Avaaz every year. These people, same with all of them, and that's not even that much. If you go to Conservation International, the Nature Conservancy, they're drawing out in excess of $600,000 a year for salaries, and that's not including travel money, board money on different boards. That's not including speaking engagements, events. So these people are making huge amounts of money. It's not activism, it's industry, right? Like, I don't make money off my writing and my activism. Activism is something we do because we're citizens, because we should care about our communities and care about each other, and we're all responsible to protect our children and to protect what sustains us and to create a better world. And for that, you should not expect massive amounts of money. And it's sad to me to see people sending money that they can't even afford to these multi-million-dollar NGOs that are absolutely in bed with corporate power.
Yeah.
It's sad.
Absolutely. I mean, it's devastating and incredibly effective. So I mean,
and it's, sorry, I just wanted to say there's grassroots groups that could really use a few bucks, right, for food, for supplies, like people that do like really radical work defending the land. Yeah, I think we have to recognize who the NGOs represent, who they work for, how they undermine our grassroots movements, how they undermine and even mold and shape our thinking. There's a lot of social engineering and conditioning happening right now. A lot of it, lots of. Right now, the movements are actually, it's like a massive free lobby group for renewable energy. Renewable, clean energy, not so clean, not so renewable. Everything's geared towards maintaining this lifestyle that we have in the West at the expense of those in the South. And so wrong. And yeah, anyway, I just wanted to say it's like activism has become a lobby group for industry. If you go to one of the key Greenpeace people, his whole Twitter feed is promotion of so-called clean energy and for industry. Like, this is not about defending land. This is not about protecting nature.
This is a really important piece for our listeners as well is the renewable energy, because the reality that the renewable energy is not the answer and is not as clean as we've been led to believe is another huge betrayal and a kind of big piece for people to stomach. So can you just unpick that a little bit?
Well, there's a lot of discussion right now about the movie that Jeff Gibbs just put out, Planet of the Humans, and that Jeff does an amazing job at really slaying what green energy is. He really does an amazing job at exposing what green energy is and exposing actually the faux environmental movement. That being said, Michael Moore comes out right after and tries to drag everybody back into the very same channels that's supporting that, like the Extinction Rebellion, Greta Thunberg, the Democrats. So in interviews, like not within the film, after the film, he's using his platform just to drag everybody back into the same system that the film basically exposes. But aside from that, still in those respects, a really good film. The only problem I have with it is basically it paints all humans as the problem instead of the system itself. Yeah. Again, tourism, capitalism, imperialism, patriarchy, racism. So again, without those things as our bedrock foundation, worthless. But it's a great movie to see what green, so-called green energy actually is.
Yeah, I felt a huge relief watching it, just having it named.
Yeah.
And then, you know, obviously seeing different people's responses to it, it's a minefield, and it's so tricky because, you know, people don't know what to believe, and yeah, it's huge. So I hope that some listeners will go along and read some of your really amazing, thorough research to help connect the dots for themselves, because there's so many things that it raises questions around, and like, no, can't possibly, you know, renewable energy, the NGOs, and
another thing too, like right now, even Population Matters, which is like a really, in my opinion, racist, vile NGO. They're always talking about population, but only as it pertains in the global south, when really, and what's not in the movie is the class analysis on the population. Like it just basically paints all humans are horrible, we're all disgusting, dirty, and destroy the earth. But they leave out the fact that that indigenous peoples representing 5% of the planet actually care for and protect 80% of the planet's biodiversity. So you can't just say that as a blanket statement. So when we republished the film on Wrong Kind of Green, we added a caveat to it to talk about the population and how it has to be looked at and constructed. And, you know, for example, 1% of the world creates 50% of the emissions. And that's what these NGOs and everybody else never talks about, because it's their world that they want to protect, their lifestyle that they want to protect at the expense of the global south and at the expense of the planet. And I just wanted to add to Avaaz, all the NGOs, you'll be hard pressed to find anybody that goes against the New Deal for Nature, which is the monetization of nature, financialization of nature. Avaaz promotes it, Greenpeace promotes it, they're all on board with it. They're all promoting it with campaigns that actually never really mention the word, never really say what it is. You really have to start becoming media literate and learn how to keywords and how things are framed, language. So yeah, Greta, XR, they never mention the New Deal for Nature. They never speak out against it. It's supported by the United Nations, all the UN affiliated, the Convention of Biological Diversity, UN is behind it. WWF, one of the most notorious, worst NGOs in the world, responsible for deaths of Indigenous people, torture, rape, they're behind it. These are the people, okay? These are the organizations in the movement responsible for killing and death and rape and torture. I mean, They have all the money in the world. They hire the best psychologists. They have the best advertisers, the best marketers. They create beautiful, holistic sounding, feeling advertisements, videos. I mean, they really have so much at their disposal that we don't have. So you really have to do the work and educate yourself on and come to the understanding that that's all part of one system. And then there's us, and they're not going to work. They work for them, and we're on our own. So stop expecting what's happened. People stop doing things in communities and stop their own resistance because we thought Greenpeace would solve it. Or we thought Greenpeace would work on that.
Yeah.
Sierra Club would fix this. And then it allowed us to not worry about it, right? You can just pay your money each month or whatever. Mm-hmm. They're taking care of that. And so we've really let that happen. I mean, it's not really, people didn't know. People thought those groups were advocating on our behalf. They didn't really know that they're all one and the same.
Yeah. And that level of controlled opposition, I witness it in everything now. So any movement that grows any level of momentum will have a controlled sort of slipstream, which is the direction that is sort of taking us off, so that we won't be as effective as we would if we just really just kind of listen to, okay, what is the action I need to take here? And
yeah, these things are all top down. They're already written. Being that's how they channel our energy. They frame it basically. We mobilize amongst XR and Greta and whoever they present to us, and we mobilize to demand what they have already designed and ready to lay out for us. Mm-hmm. Like it's a complete facade. So we're demanding things that they want to give us that further annihilate the planet. They are able to have us march for our own annihilation. As simple as that. We're marching and demanding our own destruction.
Yeah.
And then when they give us something, it's like, then it's presented as a victory or a win. It's their win. It's their victory. It's not our victory. Mm-hmm. This is a world designed for them, not for us. It's just happened again, a huge global consolidation of power. Where World Economic Forum now presides over United Nations. It presides over the World Health Organization and all those agencies within those groups, under the UN. You have Bill Gates now. He was number 2. I think he must be number 1 now, funder of the World Health Organization, which is a UN agency. I mean, the corporations literally, they own everything now. They're taking control of everything. What's happened, we have no resistance to what's happening. We're being swallowed up. Extinction Rebellion, the Greta Thunberg movement, that really came in and mobilized everyone. It's like, how Facebook and Twitter are platforms and they make billions of dollars and their success is dependent on the labor, the people putting in the data. It's like those movements are built on the backs of people like you and I who want a better world. Mm-hmm. And, people just assume that those people have their interests at heart, but they're actually working for the interests that are opposite to our interests, if that makes sense. So we're like the free labor. We're like what empowers them to have a voice. I mean, if you took away all that support of the citizenry, they're nothing without that support. That support is what gives them power at international conferences. That's why they're allowed to go in, why they're invited everywhere. They have that support of the populace behind them. And then without that, they're nothing. So we're feeding that. But what we don't understand is we're feeding the very machine that's destroying nature. We really have to take back control of our movements and recognize who we should be aligned with. We should be aligned with each other, with our brothers and sisters, not with Bill Gates, not with Klaus Schwab, not with people that protect their interests at the expense of ours. They're not going to promote in the media that they own and control and use against us. They're not going to promote campaigns or movements that have, you know, massive winning. They're not going to promote those. They don't want to give people ideas. You know, like there's a lot of radical movements in the global south that succeed in keeping, you know, mining off their lands. They use radical tactics, all kinds of stuff, sabotage, sometimes kidnapping. They do what they have to do to defend their land, defend their water, defend their people. We don't hear about those. They, you know, they want you just to stick with Avaaz. Stick, you know, stick with 350 people they tell you to stick with.